The Washington ballroom was electric with the hum of cameras, murmuring reporters, the muted clink of crystal glasses as the high-profile charity gala unfolded under a ceiling glittering with chandeliers. It was the kind of event where the rich and powerful mingled in tailored gowns and pressed suits, pretending the smiles were genuine while their eyes constantly scanned the room for political rivals, potential allies, or lurking scandals. At the center of it all, Ivanka Trump stood with the air of a seasoned socialite, her champagne flute barely touched, her designer gown cascading like a waterfall of silk, her practiced smile aimed directly at the press pool, waiting to hang on. Her every word. Tonight, she had not come merely to be photographed. She had come to make a statement, to draw a line in the sand, to aim her rhetorical spear at none other than Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who had been gaining traction, and unsettling the political establishment with her fiery speeches and unapologetic truth-telling. Ivanka's entourage parted the crowd as she stepped toward the press corner, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome of calculated confidence. And then, with a voice that carried just enough contempt to be noticed but wrapped in the sugar of her usual public poise, she spoke into the microphones. "I think we have to be honest," she began, her gaze sweeping across the sea of lenses and notepads. "Someone like Jasmine Crockett is simply unfit for the kind of serious leadership America needs. Her behavior, her rhetoric, it's unbecoming, divisive, and frankly dangerous for the stability of our nation." The words hit like a thrown stone, rippling instantly through the crowd. Reporters' heads lifted, pens scratching more quickly. The air felt tighter, as though the chandeliers themselves had dimmed in anticipation. Ivanka continued, "It's not about politics, it's about character. We can't afford leaders who treat governance like a circus. America deserves better." She allowed the silence after her sentence to hang for a moment, knowing full well the effect it would have. Across the room, seated near the dais, Jasmine Crockett heard every syllable. She had been at the event under the radar, invited by a mutual donor who perhaps thought the two women might exchange polite niceties. Instead, what she heard was a direct shot across her bow. Jasmine didn't flinch. She set down her glass of sparkling water, her expression unreadable, but inside a quiet fire was building. She had anticipated that Ivanka might one day publicly challenge her. Their paths had been crossing more often, with Crockett's influence growing and Ivanka's political ambitions simmering beneath the surface. But Jasmine had not come tonight empty-handed. The last few weeks had been filled with careful maneuvering, quiet investigation, and a stroke of luck that had delivered into her possession a recording, one that could alter the trajectory of the conversation entirely. She had debated when and where to reveal it, but Ivanka had just chosen the stage and set the spotlight herself. The gala's atmosphere thickened as guests began to sense a brewing confrontation. Phones came out. Texts were sent under tables. Producers in far-off control rooms were already getting pinged. Something's about to happen. Jasmine rose from her seat with deliberate grace, smoothing the skirt of her emerald green gown, her heels clicking in perfect counterpoint to Ivanka's earlier rhythm as she walked toward the press corner. The crowd instinctively parted for her. By the time she reached the arc of cameras, the air was crackling. "Ivanka," Jasmine began, her voice even but carrying that resonant weight that had made her speeches go viral. "You say I'm unfit? That I lack the character for leadership? That's quite the statement, especially from someone with your history." Ivanka's smile faltered for the briefest fraction of a second, a hairline crack in the polished porcelain. The press leaned in, hungry. "But since you brought character into question," Jasmine continued, "I think it's only fair that we all hear something that might help put your own fitness into perspective." She reached into the sleek clutch bag at her side and drew out her phone, the gold casing catching the light. A hush fell, so deep that the only sound was the faint whir of the air vents above. Jasmine tapped the screen and suddenly, through the ballroom speakers connected by a stroke of planning and the discreet cooperation of a sympathetic event, a voice began to play. It was Ivanka's. Not the measured, public Ivanka, speaking to donors or television hosts, but a raw, unfiltered Ivanka in what was clearly a private conversation. The recording crackled slightly, but was unmistakable. "Honestly, I don't care what happens to those people as long as we keep our control." Politics is business. And sometimes people are collateral. It's the way it works. A murmur shot through the room like an electric current. Faces turned. Some were stunned, others smirking. A few already recording on their phones for the inevitable social media firestorm. Ivanka's complexion shifted, her posture stiffening as the recording continued with even more damning words. Words that would paint a picture of cold calculation and disregard for the very public she claimed to serve. The gala had transformed. From an evening of polished networking into a live political theater, and the audience knew they were witnessing something irreversible. Jasmine didn't speak over the recording. She let Ivanka's own voice hang in the air, each phrase sinking deeper into the consciousness of the room. And when it ended, Jasmine simply looked at the cameras and said, "UNFIT. I'll let America decide who that really applies to." The silence that followed was deafening. It's the kind of silence that is louder than any outburst. A heavy pause where the air feels almost solid, pressing against every ear in the room. Eyes darted between Ivanka and Jasmine, the unspoken question. Lingering, would Ivanka attempt to explain, deny, or deflect? The cameras had found her face now, close-up shots catching the twitch of her jaw, the subtle tightening around her eyes, the faint whitening of her knuckles as she gripped her champagne flute with a little too much force. Years of media training screamed at her to regain control of the narrative, but this was different. This was her own voice, unvarnished and cruel, broadcast to some of the most influential people in Washington. The press pool was already sending live updates, tweets firing off into the digital ether. Hashtags beginning to form in real time, captions like Ivanka's secret recording shocks gala flashing in newsroom drafts. Ivanka's PR instincts kicked in. She straightened, forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and leaned toward the microphones. "That recording," she began, "is being taken wildly out of context. It's part of a private strategy discussion where—" But Jasmine stepped forward, closing the space between them just enough to signal that she wasn't about to let the explanation glide unchecked into the public consciousness. "Context?" Jasmine said, her voice slicing through the murmurs. "The context, Ivanka, is that you were talking about human lives as if they were pawns. That's not strategy, that's a confession of your values." Gasps rippled through the crowd again, and the tension ratcheted up another notch. Ivanka's security detail shifted subtly at the edges, their eyes scanning for threats. But this was a battle no bodyguard could shield her from. The lights from the cameras were hot now, their beams making the air feel charged. Somewhere in the back, a cable news producer could be heard shouting into a phone, "Get this feed up now." The event organizers looked pale, whispering frantically to each other as they realized the gala's charitable mission had been hijacked into a political showdown that would eclipse every speech, every auctioned item, every carefully orchestrated photo op. Jasmine didn't waste a second. She knew the momentum was hers. "You called me unfit," she said, her voice gathering strength. "Let's examine what fitness for leadership really means. It's not about a last name. Not about how many charity balls you attend or how many photo shoots you've done for glossy magazines. It's about whether you stand for the people who elected you, whether you see them as equals whose lives have value, or as expendable variables in your business deals." The room was hooked. Even those who normally avoided political drama were transfixed by the rawness of the moment. No? A senator at the back, trying and failing to look disinterested, subtly turned his body to get a better view. A billionaire donor who had been sipping brandy froze mid-sip, his eyes narrowing as if weighing whether this confrontation would alter his political investments. Ivanka tried again. "Jasmine, this is beneath you. What's beneath me?" Jasmine cut in. "Is staying silent when people like you wrap themselves in the flag but strip it away from those who need it most. This recording is just one example. I could play more." That line landed like a depth charge. More? The crowd leaned in, sensing that the iceberg beneath Ivanka's carefully curated image might be far larger than they'd thought. For the first time, Ivanka's smile disappeared entirely, replaced by a taut, unreadable mask. She took a step closer to Jasmine, lowering her voice, but not enough to escape the range of the microphones. "You think you're untouchable?" Ivanka murmured. "You're playing with fire." Jasmine didn't flinch. "Good," she replied evenly. "I brought a match." The audience collectively inhaled, and somewhere, someone let out a half-choked laugh at the audacity. Would be quoted, memed, and replayed across the internet within hours, but in that moment, it was a declaration of open war. The event's organizers tried to step in, moving toward the women, but the press swarmed closer instead, creating a human barrier of cameras and microphones. The ballroom's elegant acoustics seemed to amplify every breath, every click of a camera shutter, every whisper traded between onlookers. Jasmine's phone was still in her hand, and her thumb hovered near the play button again. The implication was clear. There was more ammunition, and she was willing to use it if provoked. The political calculus in Ivanka's mind was shifting rapidly. Deny and risk looking defensive. Tack and risk further exposure. Retreat and look weak. None of the options were palatable. Her instincts told her to pivot, to reclaim the narrative. But Jasmine's presence was like a wall she couldn't go around without going through. The press knew it too, and they were already framing the scene in terms of a duel Crockett versus Trump, live and unscripted. Outside the ballroom, social media was already ablaze with hashtags multiplying, hashtag IVANKA recording, hashtag UNFIT or truth, hashtag Crockett via Trump. Political commentators were being called into studios. Interns were being dispatched to dig up past conflicts between the two. And somewhere, opposition research teams were salivating at the chaos unfolding. Inside, Jasmine took one small step back, not in retreat, but in deliberate control of the pacing. She let the tension breathe, her eyes never leaving Ivanka's. "I'll tell you what, Ivanka," she said finally, her tone almost conversational, which somehow made it even more cutting. "If you think this is out of context, I'll be happy to release the full conversation. Every word, every name, every plan you laid out in that meeting, and I'll do it before sunrise." That was the kill shot, not the release itself, but the certainty in her voice that she could and would. A murmur swept through the room, the kind of murmur that tells you you're witnessing a turning point, something that will be replayed in documentaries years later. Ivanka opened her mouth, then closed it again, her eyes flickering with something, fear, calculation, maybe both. The power balance in the room had shifted entirely, and everyone knew it. The gala string quartet, which had been scheduled to resume playing by now, sat frozen in the corner, instruments untouched. No one cared about the music anymore. The only symphony that mattered was the verbal one being composed in real time, each note sharp, deliberate, and unforgettable.